Numbers that go up every single year. GDP rises, markets expand, consumption increases. And if that momentum slows, everything starts to feel fragile. This is why the game exists in the first place. Because modern economies aren't designed to sit still, they're designed to grow. Let's slow this down, because on the surface, growth sounds like a good thing. More jobs, more production, higher incomes. But underneath that, there's a dependency, a quiet assumption built into the system. Tomorrow must be bigger than today. And once that assumption is locked in, everything else begins to revolve around it. Governments plan budgets based on growth. Companies invest based on growth. Markets price assets based on growth. Even debt, especially debt, depends on it. Here's where things start to get uncomfortable. Every country knows how this ends. And yet, they all keep playing. They borrow more, print more, stimulate more, not because they're reckless, but because stopping might be worse. Imagine a game where the rules are simple. Grow or fall behind. Spend or stall. Compete or get left out. Now imagine that every country on Earth is locked inside that game. No pause button, no exit, no neutral ground. This isn't theory, it's the system we're already in. And right now, the pressure to keep playing is getting stronger. Because the global economy doesn't reward stability anymore. It rewards motion, constant motion, growth, expansion, output. Because debt isn't just part of the system, it's what allows the system to keep moving. When a country borrows, it pulls future demand into the present. It spends today using tomorrow's income. Build infrastructure, fund programs, stabilize the economy during downturns. All of that sounds reasonable, necessary even. But now zoom out, because it doesn't happen once, it happens repeatedly. Each slowdown is met with more borrowing. Each crisis is met with more stimulus. And each time the system becomes a little more dependent on the next round. This is the loop. Growth requires spending. Spending often requires debt. Debt requires future growth to remain sustainable. And so the cycle continues. Now here's the part that makes it a game, because no country is operating in isolation. They're competing for investment, for capital, for influence. If one country slows down while others keep growing, capital doesn't wait, it moves. Investors shift money to where returns look stronger. Currencies adjust. Markets react. So even to slow things down, it risks falling behind. This creates pressure, not from within, but from the system itself. Keep up or lose ground. Now add another layer, currencies. Every country operates with its own currency, but those currencies don't exist in a vacuum. They're constantly being compared, traded, valued against each other. And that value matters because it affects everything: imports, exports, inflation, purchasing power. If your currency weakens too much, imports become expensive, inflation rises, living standards drop. If it strengthens too much, your exports become less competitive, growth slows. So countries walk a tightrope, trying to stay competitive without destabilizing their own economy. And once again, the easiest tool to adjust that balance? Money. Lower interest rates, increase liquidity, encourage borrowing. Which brings us back to the same mechanism. More money enters the system, growth is supported, but debt expands. Now imagine every country doing this at the same time. Because they are. This is where the game becomes global. No single country decides the rules, but everyone responds to the same pressures. A slowdown in one region affects others. A financial shock spreads across borders. And when that happens, the response is almost always the same: more support, more liquidity, more intervention. Not because it's ideal, but because the alternative, doing nothing, feels riskier. Now let's talk about the illusion, because from the outside it looks like control. Central banks adjust rates, governments pass policies, markets respond. It feels like someone is steering the system, but in reality it's closer to navigation than control. Reacting, adjusting, trying to stay balanced in a system that's constantly moving. Because the moment you stop responding, the system doesn't pause. It moves without you. Now here's where the math starts to tighten. As debt grows, the system becomes more sensitive. Higher debt means higher obligations, more interest payments, more reliance on continued growth. So even small slowdowns start to matter more, which leads to faster responses, larger interventions. And over time, the scale increases. What once required billions now requires trillions. What once took years now happens in months. The game accelerates. Now here's the strange part. Because everyone knows this, policymakers understand the risks, economists debate the sustainability, and yet the system continues in the same direction. Not because no one sees the problem, but because there's no easy alternative. If a country suddenly stops borrowing, cuts spending, tightens aggressively, growth slows, unemployment rises, markets react negatively, and in a competitive global system, that can be costly. So instead, adjustments happen gradually, carefully, but rarely in a way that breaks the cycle completely. Now zoom out even further, because this isn't just about economics. It shapes politics, decisions, priorities. Short-term stability often wins over long-term balance, because the consequences of slowing down are immediate and visible, while the risks of continuing are distant and abstract, until they're not. Now consider what happens if the system is pushed too far. If debt grows faster than the economy for too long, if growth slows while obligations remain, something has to adjust. Inflation, currency devaluation, austerity, restructuring, different outcomes, same underlying tension. Because the system can't expand forever without friction, but it also can't easily contract without pain. And that's the trap. Every country is trying to manage its own balance, but they're all connected. So one country's solution can become another country's problem. One country prints more, its currency weakens, others respond to stay competitive. One country raises rates, capital flows shift, others feel the pressure. It's a constant adjustment, back and forth. No one fully in control, but no one able to step away. Now here's the uncomfortable truth. This system works. It produces growth, innovation, rising living standards over time. But it also creates instability, cycles, imbalances. And those imbalances don't disappear. They accumulate until something forces a reset. History has seen different versions of that reset, sometimes gradual, sometimes sudden, but always disruptive. Now the question isn't whether the system will continue. It will, because too many things depend on it. The real question is how it evolves. Will the cycles become more frequent, more intense? Will the responses become faster, larger? And what happens when the margin for error gets smaller? Because right now the system feels stable, but it also feels stretched. Like something that works as long as everything keeps moving, as long as growth continues, as long as confidence holds. But if that momentum slows, even briefly, what happens to a system where every player is required to keep playing, but no one can afford to stop?